Jay here for Stretford Paddock, and this is the Paper Talk. And as you can see, I'm at Old Trafford, and it feels very much like the morning after the night before. United drawing 2-2 with Southampton last night, of course, which almost felt like a defeat because Southampton getting that late equaliser, which means Manchester United are still not in the top four, but it is still in our hands. We know we've got to face Leicester on the final day. Also, Leicester and Chelsea have some tough games. They're both above us, but Chelsea have got to face Liverpool. They've got to go to Anfield. Leicester, I think, have got to face Spurs and Sheffield United. So there's some tough games there. Chelsea, of course, have got to face Wolves as well. So not an easy run of fixtures for those two teams. So Manchester United still in with a very, very good chance of making top four. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was quite philosophical after the draw last night. It was quite deflating, and one of the talking points was a foul that wasn't picked up by Oriol Romeu on Mason Greenwood. It looked like a really nasty challenge. He seemed to sort of stamp on Greenwood's ankle. Everyone on sort of social media and in the media was kicking off about it, saying it should have been a red card and it should have been one for VAR to look at. Now, at the time on Sky Sports, Matt Le Tissier said he didn't think it was. He said he thought it was one of those where if you slowed it down, it looked worse than it was. But even he backtracked. He's obviously a Southampton legend. He backtracked later on social media, on Twitter, and said, yeah, he probably got away with it. Gary Neville was pretty angry about it. But when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was asked about it, he sort of not downplayed it, but he didn't really want to get into it too much. He said he didn't want to speak about VAR, didn't want to get into that. And he also said that all he was going to talk about when it came to the tackle was that he didn't think his ankle would have withstood that challenge. He was almost smiling as well, Ollie, when he spoke about it, which some people may say, well, why is he not kicking off? Why is he not being more angry? But it's not going to get him anywhere. I think he knows that if he wants to come on the telly and start blasting VAR and questioning people's ability and integrity, he'd probably get himself in a lot of trouble. And yes, it's deflating and it's disappointing that United didn't get the result or the decision we deserved, but we should be able to beat Southampton without relying on red cards, and maybe that's the way that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer looks at it. Now, as you'd expect, a lot of the paper talk this morning is focused on last night's game and the comments that have been made on the back of it. Some of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's comments. He felt that we didn't deserve a win, but he was quick to praise Anthony Martial, who played very well last night. Obviously got his goal, set up Marcus Rashford's goal as well, and was a thorn in the Southampton side all night. He also got man of the match on Sky. So he had a good game, and Ole called him top class, and I think most Manchester United fans will agree. It's just, as I said earlier, a bit disappointing that United weren't able to take advantage of the way that Martial was playing and some of the other players as well, Rashford, and capitalise on that. But yes, we played well in attack and we had lots of chances. So Rashford got his goal, his first goal from open play, if you're into that sort of thing, since the restart. He could have had another. We had other chances. United looked a little bit fatigued last night. I'm not going to get into the match review. You've already had that from the likes of Adam McCullough and Stephen Howson and Joe on the channel last night. Just focusing on what the papers are talking about this morning. As I said, a lot of the comments are focusing on the game and that non-red card decision. There's also talk of the injury to Luke Shaw and Brandon Williams. Luke Shaw went off with an ankle injury. He just sort of, his ankle seemed to give way under him. And then, to add insult to injury, Brandon Williams picks up a head knock, so he goes off as well. So Brandon Williams, it's doubtful he's going to be back in time for Thursday's game against Crystal Palace. We don't know how long Luke Shaw's going to be out for, but it does leave United with problems at left back just for the immediate future anyway. So one of those options may be Diogo Dalot. I mean, we've not got an abundance of left backs now. We've lost two of them. But it sort of brings me on to my next story. There's a little story doing the rounds in the local papers in Leicester that Manchester United could actually be looking at Ben Chilwell. Now, this rumour or story or whatever you want to call it popped up in the papers in the summer. There was talk of United looking at Ben Chilwell. Now, I remember speaking about this on the Transfer Daily on what was then Full-Time Devils, and I was sort of quick to dismiss it because I felt that there wasn't much chance or any chance of Manchester United buying Harry Maguire from Leicester and then getting Ben Chilwell as well in the same transfer window. I didn't see that happening. I didn't as well think that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer viewed left back as a problematic position. I still felt he had a little bit of faith in Luke Shaw. At the time, we still had Ashley Young, who scored for Inter Milan last night, but let's not go down that road of saying, oh, we should have sold him. I think we all know that Ashley Young had to move on. But we had Ashley Young, we had Luke Shaw, even Axel Tuanzebe played at left back earlier on in the season, and we had Brandon Williams coming through. Now, no one expected Brandon Williams, I think, to play as many games as he has this season. He's sort of excelled expectations and he's been a good option. Luke Shaw just prior to his injury last night, I felt at Aston Villa, he had probably his best game since his injury against PSV all those years ago in the Champions League. So it was looking okay at left back, but there's still been a few question marks. Now, I'm not saying that just because two players get injured, all of a sudden we're in for Ben Chilwell, but the Ben Chilwell rumour has been doing the rounds for a little while. But as I said earlier, I just wasn't sure that United were in for a left back or in for a player from Leicester, because we'd already bought one for big money in Harry Maguire, and Leicester, let's have it right, weren't going to sell us two of their back four. Now, the thing with Ben Chilwell is he's having a great season. He has become a target for Chelsea. They've been looking at him. They've been linked with him quite heavily, and also Manchester City have popped up on the radar as well. But recently there's talk that maybe Manchester United could be interested as well, and maybe a deal could be done there. Now, the thing with Leicester is, I mentioned this yesterday on the paper talk, Leicester are a club that will sell players. You can buy players from Leicester. We've seen that. We bought Harry Maguire from them. We've seen in the past players like N'Golo Kante and Danny Drinkwater leave Leicester for decent amounts of money. But they're not a selling club in the sense that they will let players go on the cheap. They're not a club that feels like they have to sell players every summer. Leicester are quite a well-run club, and they're owned by rich owners. They've got owners who I think, they're billionaires, and they're emotionally invested in the club. We know they lost their owner in that tragic accident not long ago, and the family is still involved in the club, and they do care about the club. So yes, Leicester are a club that at times will have to sell players, as we've seen, but they're not a club that are just going to let you come in and pick players up on the cheap. So if United were in for Chilwell, and it's a big if, then, and you were going up against the likes of Manchester City and Chelsea, you'd probably expect big money to part hands for that deal to happen. You're probably looking at around the £60 million, I think, mark is what's being touted in the papers. And that kind of makes sense because, as I've said earlier, Leicester are a club, obviously, who are challenging for the top four this season, so they're not going to let the best players go on the cheap, especially when they're not a club that needs to sell players for low amounts of money. Is this deal going to happen? Is this a deal that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants to happen? We'll have to wait and see. As I said earlier, we're not just going to buy a player because we've had injuries. Obviously, Ben Chilwell can't come this season, so it'd be for next season anyway. Luke Shaw has been a little bit up and down over the past year or so. We know that earlier on in the season, it wasn't even nailed on that he'd start every game. I think he was starting and he got an injury, and Ashley Young came in, then Axel Tuanzebe came in, then obviously Brandon Williams came in, and there was talk for a little while of maybe Brandon Williams becoming our first choice left back. We went to a back three at one point where Luke Shaw was playing quite well as part of a back three. Since the restart, he's been our left back, and he's played pretty well. He's done well. I think he's sort of impressed most games and improved most games until last night, where he picked up that injury against Southampton, which is obviously a massive setback. We'll see how serious that injury is, but it's one to keep an eye on. There's lots of ifs and buts and maybes with any transfer deal, and there is with this. I'm sort of sceptical about how serious the interest is in Ben Chilwell, if I'm being brutally honest. And also, a lot of it may depend on Champions League football. United, Chelsea and Manchester City all linked with Ben Chilwell, and only Manchester City, following yesterday's decision, are guaranteed Champions League football next season. Chelsea, United still in the balance there, and it may well have to depend on that. Ben Chilwell may well even have a choice of the two clubs and may well choose the one that's got Champions League football. One to keep an eye out. Reports in Leicester that United could be in for Ben Chilwell, so we'll see if anything comes of that. But at the moment, as I said earlier, I'm very sceptical. Another story that's come out about transfers going out the other way is one for Phil Jones, the almost forgotten man here at Old Trafford, who could be heading to Serie A. Apparently there's interest in him from some Serie A clubs. Now the problem at the moment is Phil Jones has just had, I think he's had minor knee surgery, so he's not going anywhere at the minute. Now it's not just Serie A clubs who are reportedly interested in Phil Jones, also West Ham. David Moyes' West Ham are looking at the former Blackburn defender, and he could be an option for them. Now Phil Jones has often become a figure of ridicule at Manchester United. A lot of fans sort of say, oh, you know, he's not very good, he's useless, and he's got no future at the club. But if you allow me playing devil's advocate, Phil Jones has got a lot of experience. He's not that old. I think he's still in his 20s. He did go to the World Cup not that long ago in 2018, so he's an England defender, albeit, you know, one who's not had many caps recently. So if you're a club that's near the bottom of the Premier League, or you're a club that's in Serie A, Phil Jones may be a good option for you. We've seen how Chris Smalling and Ashley Young have shone in Serie A. Even someone like Alexis Sanchez, who many people had given up on, who thought his career was over, has rejuvenated himself somewhat in Serie A. So going to Italy may well be the right move for Phil Jones. I honestly don't think he's got much of a future at Old Trafford. You look at the options we've got at centre-back. We've obviously got Harry Maguire, we've got Victor Lindelof, we've got Axel Tuanzebe, you've got youngsters coming through. We mentioned yesterday Tenen Mengi, players like that. So Eric Bailly, of course. I just don't think Phil Jones is going to have much of a future here. So it looks like he's going to be heading out when he's fit again. Could Serie A or West Ham be one of the options for him? We'll have to wait and see. It definitely looks like it could be that way. I mean, United usually are able to sell our players who aren't completely past it. You look at the players that we've sold in the past, players that you think, okay, they haven't got a future at United. They've still managed to go to decent level clubs. Some of the clubs I mentioned earlier, Chris Smalling going to Roma, Ashley Young going to Inter Milan. These are top clubs. They're not, these aren't sort of smaller clubs on the continent. These are big clubs in Italy. So Phil Jones may be looking at a move abroad. He may be able to kickstart his career, get it going again, re-kickstart his career, I should say, get it going again, because it's obviously stagnated here at Old Trafford, and he has become the forgotten man. I mean, he was due a testimonial, and I think he said that he didn't want his testimonial because he didn't think anyone would turn up, which, right, it's quite, a lot of people were laughing at that, but it is quite tragic, and it just shows the sort of levels he's sunk to, that he knows that he doesn't really have a future at the club, and the fans don't really rate him anymore, to the point where he doesn't even want his testimonial because he doesn't think anyone will turn up. So a lot of the paper talk this morning is focusing on last night's game and those transfer stories that I've spoken about, that Phil Jones could be heading out of Old Trafford and that United could be in the hunt for Ben Chilwell. Two stories worth keeping an eye on. It's all gone quiet, a little bit quiet on the Jadon Sancho front. We spoke about Jadon Sancho yesterday, how Dortmund had named their price. There's nothing new there, as you'd expect. Few people commenting that they think Jadon Sancho would be a great signing for Manchester United. Not exactly a revelation, not exactly insightful. I think we can all agree on that. Mason Greenwood had a little bit of a quiet game last night, which has opened up the doors, because a lot of people were saying, well, do we need to go in for Jadon Sancho? Or some people, I should say, were saying, do we need to go in for Jadon Sancho when we've got Mason Greenwood and Anthony Martial and Marcus Rashford? But like I said yesterday, you need options. Yesterday proved that. Had we had Jadon Sancho as a different option to come off the bench, no disrespect to Dan James, then maybe that could have made the difference. And I think if we are going to challenge for the very top, we do need to bring in some top-class talent. We do need a player like Jadon Sancho, who can cause teams problems, who is a different alternative to the likes of Mason Greenwood, Anthony Martial and Marcus Rashford. So Jadon Sancho rumours gone a little bit quiet. We know what's happening there. We've spoken about it in the past. Dortmund have more or less named their price. It's whether Manchester United are willing to meet it. And if anything, last night has probably shown that Manchester United should be going for Jadon Sancho, should be looking at him as another option here to bring to Old Trafford. Get involved in the comments, guys. Let us know what you think about some of those rumours. Do you think Manchester United need a left-back? Is Ben Chilwell a player that you want to see come to Old Trafford? Do we have other priorities? Is it all about Jadon Sancho and just focusing on that deal, getting that deal over the line, making it happen? Or should United be looking at other players as well? Where do you think United need to strengthen? Where do you think the main problems are? Last night has opened up a few question marks, and it has reminded us that we're not there yet. I think there was such momentum and such positivity that many of us thought, oh well, maybe one or two signings and we'll be challenging. It's going to take more than that. We can see it. We saw it from last night. There was a few issues in defence. There was a tired midfield. The game seemed to catch up with one or two players, and we lacked a few more options going forward as well. So that shows you how much work here is to be done in the transfer market. There's not much time as well. We know that it's a shorter window. So Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he's going to have his work cut out. So get involved in the comments. Who do you think United should bring in? Who would you like to see bring in? Do you think United should be going for Ben Chilwell? Do you think United should be getting rid of Phil Jones? I think that's a bit of a no-brainer, if I'm being honest. Do you think Luke Shaw is the answer at left back, or Brandon Williams, or we need to look at other options? Loads of great comments yesterday, loads of people getting involved, letting us know what they thought, players they'd been looking at, players they thought could come here to Old Trafford and do a job. It's great to see everyone getting involved in the comments, supporting the channel. We've had a great response since we had the rebrand, and we much appreciate it. I've been Jay. This has been the Paper Talk for Stretford Paddock. We're here at Old Trafford. We'll have loads more videos coming up soon. We've got the Tier 1 transfer podcast where we'll be speaking to a great journalist, a Tier 1 journalist. We'll have me and Ronaldo chatting to him later and going through all the Tier 1 stories as well. We've also got podcasts, we've got previews, we've got the lot. So make sure you stay tuned to Stretford Paddock. Keep liking, keep sharing and keep subscribing. I've been Jay. This has been the Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.